The details. Let's have a look at what's making news in print and online this morning, and we're joined by Dr. Scott Burchill, Honorary Fellow at Deakin University. G'day, Scott.
Good morning, Lisa and Michael.
Are you feeling it as well? Just a few days left until this election day. We've seen Scott Morrison sort of giving some pretty big interviews, haven't we? There was 7:30 last night. He's spoken to The Australian this morning. That's their front page.
Well, The Australian has ceased to really be a newspaper these days. It's just a sort of political pamphlet for the Liberal National parties. They just sort of reprint his headlines without criticism, and they've done it again this morning by simply carrying his quotes, arguing that there are apparently enough undecided voters that could still carry him to victory on Saturday. I suspect that that's wishful thinking at very best. There's always been this debate about, undecideds right up until the last minute, but the number of pre-poll votes as well as postals would suggest that a lot of people have tuned out and well before the last week of the campaign and have made up their minds already. And I don't think that the Australian preaching to the converted is going to really change very much.
It has been very interesting, hasn't it, the number of pre-polls and postals. Yes, you could be right. There may be some baked-in views on the Prime Minister that precede the election campaign, which may go back years. Also, let's not forget, people are voting out of fear that they may get COVID and therefore may not be able to physically get to a ballot booth and enjoy their democracy sausage on Saturday. But, gee, I think it's already 3 times, isn't it already, Scott, the number of people voting? Something's going on.
Yeah, something very much is going on, yeah. So, look, I just don't think that people need the last week of wall-to-wall interviews and political advertisements to decide to pass their judgment, really, on the performance of the government. I think they know the government quite well now and have made up their mind one way or the other. But it suits the agenda of the Australian to keep this as a kind of a nail-biting finish when I think in fact, it's anything but that. I think the Australian is the problem for the Australian, of course, is that their own political polls, their own news poll, is showing virtually no change over the last month. A clear and decisive victory for the ALP. So it's hard to construct a story around a close result and undecided voters when your own polling is saying the exact opposite.
2019's calling us, Scott. It's just reminding us it's around. I mean, you're a brave man to be so definite about that. The reality is there are a lot of people saying that it could end up being pretty close.
Well, I think they're all wrong. I think Mr. Morrison is toast, to be honest. And I think it will be a very clear and decisive victory for the ALP. The only really interesting issue will be how many of the independents will get in as well.
Yes, well, that's interesting. Well, if you're right and the Labor government wins conclusively, the independents really won't have much of a role to play other than representing their local communities in the event of a majority government on either side of the spectrum. Watch this space. We'll come back to you maybe on Monday and see how I
might be in witness protection by then, Michael.
I love a news breakfast guest with strong views, though, so you're always welcome to express what you feel like. Now, let's go to The Age, and it has a follow-up on the Prime Minister's bold plan announced at the campaign launch on Sunday on super and home.
Well, you have to wonder why they left it so late if it's such an important policy. But I can't find too many people thinking it's a great idea other than Mr. Wilson, the sitting member in Goldstein, because I just wonder how many people in their 30s looking for their first home have enough superannuation to contribute to the purchase of their first property. The fact that they have to pay it back once they sell that property means that, of course, they're going to have to factor that into the sale of that house when they upgrade. So I'm not sure that borrowing money from your retirement to buy your house is going to be great when you get to my ancient age and retirement when you are having to live off your superannuation. So it's a strange one if it's a key policy, why would you release it less than a week out from the actual vote.
That is the odd thing, isn't it? And a supposed game changer policy so late in the piece, and also going to what we were saying earlier, after a time when so many people have voted already.
Yes, I don't think it'll shift too many votes. And young people will realise that when they go to their superannuation balance sheet, they haven't got a huge amount to draw on, which will make a difference as to whether they can put a deposit down on a property. As your previous guest suggested, housing affordability is a supply-side problem, and it's not going to really improve. In fact, as what Senator Hume said yesterday, it's likely to increase the cost of property initially because the market will factor in the fact that buyers are perhaps more accessible initially. So I don't really see how this policy will change too many minds in the voting schedule.
OK, the conversation's going to turn to costings today. Josh Frydenberg, Simon Birmingham are going to release them over the next couple of hours. It is apparently going to show a $1 billion improvement to the budget bottom line. We are not sure when Labor's going to release its costings, probably by Thursday at the latest. The AFR is suggesting that it's going to be bigger debt and deficits under Labor.
Well, Phil Coorey is continuing his sort of cutting and pasting of the Prime Minister's talking points again. Last week it was when I think Mr Albanese suggested he supported a 5% rise in the minimum wage. He said we're heading to a Weimar Republic. Now he's claiming, without even seeing the detail, that there's going to be bigger debt and deficits under Labor. I'm not sure how he knows this unless he's sort of been receiving these things subliminally, but again, this sort of discussion may fill up the pages of the Financial Review and the business section of the Australian and the Sydney Morning Herald, but I think the average voter is not going to suddenly start working through the fine detail of where the costings are to determine whether or not they vote Labor or for the Liberal National Party. But it's clear that the Financial Review is joining with the Australian in cheerleading for the government, and that's not going to come as a surprise to those of us who read the paper on a regular basis.
Listen, we'll have to get you back for another chat. I think you're sitting on the fence regarding your views on some media outlets over the course of the election.
Wait to hear what I say about the ABC, Michael.
Well, perhaps so. That could be worth a whole show, Scott. We'll come back to you. But listen, lots of love as our viewers always chip in regarding your bookcase. Lots of people voting one, Scott Burchill's bookcase. So I think it's got to be the best, if not the messiest one in Australia.
Well, I'll give it its own Instagram account next week. We'll see how we go.
TikTok, Scott. Get with the cool kids.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm way behind.
Scott Burchill, thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay.
Thanks, Lizzie.
All right. OK, let's move on now. The future of Australian car rally races on tarmac is in doubt after a bombshell decision by Motorsport Australia.